welcome to Cory's Corner. I should have done a better job editing that song. Damn. But anyway, hail. I hope you're all doing great on this Saturday morning / afternoon, wherever you're at. Of course, joining us today is the wonderful and awesome Lester, the Skeptic Tank. How you doing today, sir?
Can't complain on a Saturday morning.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. And for those of you who have never seen one of my one-on-one interviews, this is going to be weird. So just saying just a little bit. So Lester, you're over here on YouTube. You're currently sitting at what, 60?
Yeah, 61 according to the numbers last I checked.
Nice. And anyone watching, make sure you're subscribed to Lester so he can get that sub count up. He's currently sitting at 61 subs and 89 videos. Tell people what you do on the channel real quick.
I mainly try to answer certain questions, whether posed by those who comment, which I appreciate probably more than subscriptions, because I've been trying to tell people, like, when you hit subscribe, it's only if you get tagged. That's the first level. Second level is when you hit the arrow and you say all, that means you get any notifications put out by that provider. That's I don't know if it's a missing detail, but it's easy to overlook. That's why I was early on, I'm like, why am I not getting, gotta set it to all. But what I try to do is answer questions, and particularly within my first couple of videos, a guy says, hey, can you do more Slackware related things? That's the brand of Linux I run on my PC. So it started that way, but I wanted to push the boundaries of what people perceive as baselines. And okay, what can I get away with? I'm in a Slackware environment, which for the non-initiated, no worries, Cory. But long story short, with Linux, the most popular one is Ubuntu. And low-spec Linux laptop can speak to that.
Word.
Many reasons why Ubuntu is the most popular. For reasons that I may not be a fan of, maybe not. Maybe low-spec Linux laptop is a fan of for those reasons. But when I got into Linux, it was to unlearn a lot of stuff. So I wanted it to be difficult. Not that I'm a glutton for punishment, but I needed that punishment to overcome a lot of preconceived notions. And that's where I wanted to go with the direction of my channel. And so I would pose various questions, like with my pickups that I've gotten over the time I started my channel. So physical media, toys even. Like I think I had a couple of videos on picking up drinks from the Dollar Tree, where I would get these little collectibles on top of the drink caps for $1.25. Like, all right, I can get down with that, especially when these dollar drinks would give me likes the folks like Batman, Darth Vader. Didn't seem to matter. It's like, okay, I can get this character. Or lately, I've been getting books. People talk about physical media like DVDs, Blu-rays, and that's all good and well. But the other one is books.
Yeah.
And the latest question I push out there is, hey, when there's talk about digital content and digital and streaming, and people lament the de-emphasis of physical media, and it's almost like we're playing into the hands of those entities. Not that I don't like having digital, I just understand the reality of digital is you're paying for the access to the content, not the ownership. Now, when it comes to books, you can look at it from the standpoint of, hey, like a dictionary, it takes a while for the publishing process to kick in, because you got to do the review process, and then eventually you release the book.
Right.
And then when it comes to owning assets, and I was explaining this last night over at Pro's channel, and I said, you can sell those assets back if you're in a jam or in a pickle.
Right.
Books are probably more profitable comparatively than discs, unless you have that rarefied disc for whatever reason you did not decide to open.
Right.
Well, I guess that's what they talk about a collector's market. But I tend to get things to consume them.
Mm-hmm.
Likely the depreciation will be such I will not. Oh, I see. I'm looking at low specs Linux laptop. Though I
Yeah.
use an official flavor instead of stock Ubuntu. I just don't like using. I am with him. So what low specs is talking about
And
is
of course, Lester's referring to this. Hail to low spec Linux laptop. Real quick, I'll just say hi to the chat. We've got low spec. We've got Nate D. Hail, Nate D. The Gaming Jew. Hail. And John Edgar. Hail, sir. Wonderful to have
so
you here.
real
All right.
quickly. And
Mhm.
what he's referring to is the way your graphical desktop looks. You know, when everyone logs into Windows, that's your desktop environment. And so what he's talking about in Linux, you have the choice of using GNOME, which if he was textbook, it would be spelled in caps, because a lot of the Linux world, they like using abbreviations. So
Right.
GNOME, and then what I use for myself is K Desktop or KDE. And there's
Okay.
another one that I think low spec prefers, which is called the X cholesterol free environment,
All right.
or XFCE. That's what it stands for. So it's like that's the other thing too, is I didn't think my channel would take the direction that it did,
Mm-hmm.
but because of a few questions, I said, okay, let's test the waters, because I've gotten to a point where I just want my stuff to work without doing all the upkeep that I used to do. I'm not
Right.
getting any younger. I work a 9 to 5, 8 to 5 job. I don't have a lot of time. I have a lot of hobbies, but at the same time I go, okay, what can I do to stay within my Linux environment as much as possible without going into my Windows, which I reserve for strictly gaming nowadays. You know, that,
Right.
I mean, what other benefit is there to Windows? Okay,
Mhm.
app compatibility, but as low spec can tell you, there are a lot of alternatives for the various apps you have out there. Like, I just canceled my Adobe Creative Cloud.
Okay.
That was just $55 out of my bank account every month, and I didn't use any of those apps, because as I push questions, I go, hey, let's push this further. What Office alternatives can I get away with? What Photoshop, what Illustrator, whatever, what other alternatives can I get away with? Again,
Yeah.
and because if you're not familiar with a program called VirtualBox, you can install those same programs, no problem, if you set up an environment that's not a Windows partition. You can set it up and run your apps that way. If you really need them and stay within your Linux environment. So that's pretty much what I try to do. And then I'm trying to figure out how to marry what I've been talking about with my love of pop music. And
Okay.
and especially I'm still thinking about how do I want to look at I'm going to begrudgingly think about buying a ticket to watching that Taylor Swift Eras tour, because I'm not a Swiftie by
Okay.
any means. I'm not a
Right.
Swiftie. Okay, that's the one spoiler, is that I'm going to find a way to make a statement about Taylor Swift and her longevity in the music biz. Notice I put quotes in front of longevity,
Yeah.
because I know of female artists out there, domestic and international, that have done it for much longer and
Right.
had to have done more. So one of the things that I'm trying to raise is that, though people may not be familiar with Asian pop or K-pop, maybe nowadays, because guys like BTS, I'm sorry, but before BTS, there were the ones I started listening to well before that.
Okay.
But the thing about Asian pop singers, because they don't have the they don't have the currency that the Americans have.
Yeah.
Meaning that even though they reach a wide audience, the dollar margin isn't what it is in America. And that's why they try to break into the American market. But the kind of struggle they go through trying to branch into different countries, they force themselves to learn another language.
Yeah.
Has Taylor Swift ever done that? I would like to hedge my bets and say
Taylor Swift can't even maintain a relationship for more than 2 weeks. So I'm going to say no, she has no ability to learn another language. But real quick, I'm going to say hail to Landrigan. He says, yo, Cory,
hello.
Lester, and chat. Great to see you, buddy. Low spec Linux laptop says, I use Shotcut open source video editor. It has enough features for me.
Exactly.
Tons of great female artists from Japan. Shoya been at it since the 80s.
Exactly.
And he says, I saw Hanabi earlier this month. What a great show. So, all right, we're going to step into this pop thing that you're talking about here. You like pop music. How did you get interested into pop music?
Well, I would say if, the funny thing is with my initial avatar for my channel, I had my headphones on, right? But that's indicative of me liking audio more than video. I didn't know music videos until I got cable. I don't know exactly when I got cable. But I remember riding the bus to school and back and forth. And the bus drivers, I don't know if it's still the thing nowadays, but they would play music on the radio. And I still remember like it was yesterday listening to Heart's These Dreams. However long ago it was released, it was still like a member berry for me. Whenever it would be played back, dental offices with their elevator music, but I still remember those tracks. And there was a track I remember coming across, and I wondered, like, when did I first hear that track? So Pet Shop Boys, How Am I Gonna Get Through? And then I think it's subtitled, What Have I Done to Deserve This? I may not know the song by its entirety, but I remember the hooks. They got that synth hook. Just like with a lot of the Brit pop that you might come across in the 80s. I was like, okay, because I looked it up and it said 1987. Well, hey, I was riding the bus then, and I was like, that's why it still sticks in my mind. So that's why when it comes to pop music, I tend to be a bit curmudgeonly. Especially with a lot of the 90s boy bands. Like, no, I've heard better.
I have another question for you on that, but hold on. It's Christian Delorme. He says, bonjour, everyone. Bonjour. I hope you're doing well. You and the missus. Welcome. But so, who would you say, in your personal opinion, is the most overrated pop artist in existence?
Ooh. You could take this in many directions because...
And Christian Delorme says he just subbed to Lester. Make sure you're subbed to Lester over at the Skeptic Tank on YouTube.
So, how many directions do I want to go? Many, because that goes back to when I look at tracks. So I look at everything as much as I can in a complete perspective as possible. I think in one of the streams I talked about the word Catholic. Yes, that's been, whether right or wrong, whether intended or not, it just happened. Catholic was hijacked by the church in the sense that people use it to refer to a specific ecclesial body.
Right.
But it's a Greek term meaning complete into the whole, nothing lacking. So if you take it that way, I look at a track, understanding there are few things that you want to have vocals. Now with pop, it doesn't require the person to have the chops. Production can make up for that.
Right.
If they do it right, you can have look at Paula Abdul. I hate to say it, she doesn't have the chops. All right.
There's quite a few pop artists that don't have the chops, but they made it.
Right. So if you want to go, if you're asking me that question, all right. Paula Abdul because she just didn't have the chops. But she had the
Okay.
production to make up for it. I mean, I still remember that she had that song out, Rush, Rush, and it had Keanu Reeves. And I listened to it like decades later. I'm just hearing the monologue going on during the interlude.
Yeah.
I'm like, I could so see this now because this was like fresh off the Matrix. It's like, Paula, blah, 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 blah. And that monologue, I know Kung Fu. It's just overrated pop. So I would say Britney Spears,
Fair.
because I mean, maybe as a lot of the punditry in pop culture is that maybe the music wasn't written for her vocals, or the music wasn't such that took advantage of whatever vocals she may have had.
Okay.
Particularly if you watch the old documentaries, supposedly she had some chops, but did the production allow that to let that shine? But we're left with what we're given, and we can only go off of what we've been given.
Right.
Overrated.
I'll chime in with something super
Yeah, sure.
controversial, I suppose it might be anyway. I personally think the entire pop genre is overrated.
Okay. Yeah.
Simply because they, as you said, they don't really have a lot of singing chops.
Right.
To step back to the 90s boy band shit,
Yeah.
in sync, like Justin Timberlake has some chops. Not a lot. But when you get down to it, if you need more than 2 singers in a band, you should probably just quit. That's my personal opinion.
No, that's the interesting dynamic I observed. And I don't know what my sample size should be, but I already noticed that, at least for I never thought I would be okay with this, but when in the K-pop sphere, there was a point, like I mentioned in other streams, where there was a cutoff point where I stopped listening to a lot of the new stuff. Like,
Yeah.
it really took a lot of time, and it takes a lot of people to push me, like, hey, check this out. So one K-pop band, Girls' Generation. Like,
Okay.
who? What? I don't care. And then my friends were like, yeah. Like, okay, fine. And so I listened to Girls' Generation, and I listened to what the track they rolled out at the time when I started to get to know them, the boys, and they did an English rendition of the track. But the one thing I did notice is that no matter whether the person had the chops or not, they had distributed the vocals evenly, meaning that every member had a line.
Right.
No matter if it was 1 line or 2 lines. At least the Korean girl bands did that. But if you're talking about like J-pop, no. There was a girl group I just came across last year that just disbanded like a couple years before that. It was called Flower. Then I looked at the music video and I listened to the track. Of the number of members they have in that group, only 2 were highlighted. And that seems to be a thing in J-pop girl bands.
Okay.
Like, whether we're talking 4 members or we're talking 9, 1 or 2 vocalists would be focused upon.
Right.
And so that's the one thing I can give Korean girl groups. And maybe to some extent the Korean boy bands, even though I think their music was better than their looks. I mean, if you look at the 90s K-pop boy bands, you're thinking, is that because of the culture, or is that because of the marketing? Because being involved in the early days of forums, the K-pop forums, is like they talk about the Korean media being very conservative. So when the members show up to like a live show, they are not allowed to have their hair dyed. They're not allowed to do this and do that. They're fairly conservative as a country in terms of modesty. You know, girls aren't supposed to wear midriffs and yada yada. So it's like, you look at the... Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick, we're just going to say, hail to Mass Grave. Awesome to have you here, sir.
Overrated anybody who can
Yeah.
play their own instruments. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Christian Delorme says anyone who can't play their own instruments is overrated. Well,
Yeah.
I guess I'm overrated because I can't play any instruments, but I like to sing.
No, I mean I'm the same way. It's just like there's a thing like the joke about me is because my siblings played instruments and I didn't go beyond the recorder.
Yeah.
But
I feel that.
my the voice can be an instrument.
It can.
I mean, yeah.
Yes.
And that's the thing. That's what I talk about the production of the music. Whether like in your music, I think you use more digital mixing. Am I right in that that you don't use like a lot of the traditional instruments? It's more like arrangement. Is that right?
I personally currently use public domain music.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a different way to make the voice. Like I said, the production and the vocals, depending on how it's done, that can make for a good track. Like, and that's the thing when the people look at pop, I look at it from a track perspective, and if we're looking at an album, I have to look at it from a collective. Like I have a certain percentage. If it's like 70% of the tracks in an album, if they're decent, then it's worth the buy. Which is why I like the single setup. Back in the 90s, that's what I survived off of. I couldn't afford a full album. I just go to the warehouse and I get a single CD.
Yeah.
Or before that, I would get a single cassette because
Right.
I just needed that track.
Hell yeah. I've always been that way too, buying individual singles instead of whole albums. Massgrave says, I will say though, as a guy that's been in some pretty high regarded choirs, harmonizing and making chords is something that takes a great deal of talent. This is very true.
Yeah.
This is very true. I do not consider myself a professional vocalist in any way, or even a good lyricist for that matter, but that's neither here nor there. Christian Delorme says mixing and production is an instrument. It's a skill set. I don't know if it's an instrument.
But I'll say this about harmonization, because that requires a good musician and a good who has the skills to direct. Because I witnessed this with my own church choir. And a lot of the people are volunteer. They're not professional. We may have a professional or two, but it's more or less volunteer based. And it's just about the right coaching and the right direction.
Yeah.
And given that we do have a professional musician as a director and someone who's been an educator for most of his occupational career, I find that the choir at my church is one of the best in town. Like, so we can make do with a lot.
Since we're on the topic of music, this just popped into my brain. What are your personal feelings toward auto-tune right now? There's a lot of artists that auto-tune their shit.
They just don't know how to do it right. And the thing is, what is right? That's a tough thing to answer in itself. Is it right timing? Where in the track will it fit? And that's all I ask. It's just like, I don't want to eschew a thing in itself. It's unless I answer the question of where can it fit? And if it can't, then it's got to go. Because that's at least the sample size I've gotten. Like I've listened to my share of autotune via K-pop back in almost, I think it's the 2000s, before Lil Wayne made it cool, or whoever made autotune cool.
Fucking Lil Wayne.
Oh yeah. But anyway, I couldn't stand autotune because I haven't found a track that did it right. And when someone can, all right, I'll change my mind. But it's like I haven't found the track that does that.
Right. Hail to Jason Fox 540 Studios. Make sure you're also subscribed to Jason Fox and check out his merch store. Awesome. Bruce Lee with the lightsaber shit. Check it out.
I have to pick that one up because I'm sorry, but whatever the Bruce Lee store is peddling, I know this is public, but I wouldn't buy half of what they sold because number one, it's expensive. Two, don't know how good the quality is, except for that one throw jacket I got. It was surprisingly wind resistance, it kept me warm, and it kept me dry. So I was pleasantly surprised. Other than that, outside of the Blu-rays, which you can't mess up unless you do something egregious, what can I say? It's fine. Although I'm still waiting for my set that I pre-ordered of Way of the Dragon from Arrow. Arrow's, I think it's Arrow Films, but I had to get the UK version because Arrow Films in the US doesn't have it apparently in their catalog.
Do you have a region-free DVD player?
Yeah. So
okay, cool.
the 4K drive I got, I think with the firmware that was placed on it, it allows me to do region-free stuff. So like I got a Hudson Hawk DVD or Blu-ray, Hudson Hawk Blu-ray from the UK because it was cheaper than the American. And
it's one of my favorite movies ever. Oh my god.
Yeah. And it ripped it just because I use a program I did pay for, and don't worry, I'm not running a ring of some sorts. I'm just when it comes what's that?
I said won't buy DVD.
I mean, if we have to go underground, that's a different story. But you know what I mean. It's just that I want to have a copy that I can play back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not damage the disc. The disc is there that I can have because it's a record of my ownership. And then number two, if I have to sell it back for any reason, I can.
Right.
Depending on where I go. And I know I'm going to suffer a loss when I sell it back. But at least if I need 20 quick bucks, I can give a store, whatever store, I give them a gang of DVDs or Blu-rays or 4Ks and like, here you go.
Yeah.
Give me that 20 bucks. Or anything like that.
Yeah.
So that's why I am in this mode of physical media, whether we're talking discs, books, especially books. Like I think I mentioned that books you can make more from that. I think because like my friend, I give a book to my friend and she has an Amazon and she's like, hey Lester, you got a book you need to sell? Like a lot of the books I have are religious, liturgical, especially liturgical ones. Especially those who need who need to pay for books that are in the seminary. That's an easy sell during the school year, and it's like, hey, here's a quick $40. Here's a quick $80, because you wouldn't believe how much I can get off certain books.
Yeah, dude, some books just hold value and increase in value exponentially as the years go on. It's insane. Real quick, though, we're going to step back to the music stuff. Massgrave says, I'm very conflicted on autotune. Metal uses so many effects on everything, but I am personally offended by people who can't actually hit the notes getting that kind of fame. I agree with that. With my music and vocals, I like to rely more on, like, I'll use effects, but they're typically like limited within reverb and chorus effects, so I don't have to fuck around with doubling, because doubling is really hard for my brain to, because like the editor in me says everything has to line up. Right.
Well, but the thing is, like, when
hail to Razy Fingers, wonderful to see you.
Well, that's the thing, like it's as if we don't ask the question, what's the function of autotune? Or what's the purpose of autotune? And oftentimes when it's used, it just goes, why put that there at that point in the lyric?
Right.
And it's like, that's the question. They don't want to answer. It's like, when's the best fit of that use? It's like, if you can't find the place for it, then don't use it.
Right.
Because you're hurting the song and you're hurting the perception of the vocalist by doing that. And I think Massgrave brought that up to a good point. It's like, or at least be on key, right?
Yeah.
At least if that person cannot hit that note, then don't write that note into a song. That's what it means to have a good production team on staff. It's like, know your artist, because when it comes to that pop scene, and this is where I always laugh about K-pop, especially people who are new to it. Like, oh my God, she's so pretty. I'm like, there are a million one reasons why she looks pretty. And I'm saying that kind of tongue in cheek because I don't know how many won a good plastic surgeon goes for it in South Korea, but it's a big deal,
It really is.
And
Look,
and it's like part of the so much better than the record.
yeah,
That's a good point. But it just goes back to that pop scene of like appeal. There are
yeah.
many ways to do it, right?
Hmm.
And it's like, do you airbrush the person? Do you do this to their photo? Do they look like an idol? It just reminds me of that scene in Gran Turismo. And I don't know who watched Gran Turismo, but it was that dilemma at the end of the competition to select the person to represent them. The guy was looking at it from a standpoint of marketability versus actual skill, who the actual winner was. Kind of a spoiler alert for those who didn't watch it. Maybe not for those who did watch it, but that was the dilemma Orlando Bloom's character ran into. And I think he did a fine job as a snake oil marketer. I thought he did a good job in that, but it's
Hell
like
yeah.
in the pop sphere, you look at the degrees of appeal. So especially when it comes to this body image, especially in a place like South Korea, they have a certain profile of that, and how that look is versus actual talent. Now you got to work around whatever talents that person may have, though deficient they are, and I would say on a high degree. So what are you gonna do? You gotta make the track fit the collective you have, and that's when it comes to those girl groups, especially in Korea. When I know a lot of the K-pop groups, they each have their part, and they're allowed to play it. Whether we're talking one line or two lines or three lines in a song. So
Yeah.
that's
Real quick,
the
hail to TZ Burton.
nice
See you.
avatar, by the way.
Yes. There's that comics plush. Life-size comics plush. That's right. But
let's see. Maybe I'm tired of it being so fake. Yes.
yeah, I was gonna touch on that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Mass Grave, 100%. Everything is pretty much faked these days, especially now with the advent of AI-based vocals.
Oh God.
And I'm not looking forward to AI overtaking the music industry like it already is in the rap world. I don't know how you feel about rap, but I'm a huge rap fan, and I fucking hate mumble music, much like my friend Jason Fox says. A lot of mumble music will, as he said, rely on auto-tune to hit notes when you can't even understand what they're saying. And
I never would have thought that being used there.
Yeah, it takes the merit out of the music industry, and it pisses me off because it allows talentless hack fucksticks to come in and actually do a good job. And it bothers me that just because they have connections in the music world, they can then use a computer to make them famous.
Well, that's the thing. My line in the sand was probably the mid 2000s when I said, nope, not gonna, because there was a point where I bought every new album from anybody that I liked, whether rap, pop, rock, whatever. And then I think, especially after I heard Saint Anger, I think it's the name of the album from Metallica, I said, no bloody more. And then certain albums like Utada Hikaru, she rolled out an American album. Like, I try to listen to it and I try to give them their shake. No.
Yeah.
That's it. So rap, like, especially when Dirty South was trying to be a thing, because there was a point where music in that region was decent. Like the debut album back in the mid '90s of before Sorry Miss Jackson. There was come on, why am I blank on the name? It starts with an O. Oh God, why am I Outcast? So
Oh
the
yeah, Outcast.
ATLians or Atlians, that debut track was bumping. And then I just go, why did they go with that? It just didn't. It just didn't jive with me. Like I was down with other rap from that region, like the Brat. This is all mid '90s. And then when Nelly rolled around, like, what's this garbage?
Dude.
And that's where my line in the sand was when it came to certain rap artists. Like I could still get down with an LL Cool J track just because he's been around, and there's a way to reinvent yourself and there's a way not to.
See, when it comes down to rap, before we move on from the music discussion, I'll just come out and say it. If you're not using the Dre method, fuck you. All right. Sit down, work on the track, iron out the track, get some guys that know how to hit the notes and knows how to maintain the vocals, and just throw it out there. Don't overproduce. Overproducing is the killer of all music. Okay.
Yeah.
The more production you put into it past a certain point, the worse
Right.
it's going to be. And you guys talked about it, Saint Anger. Thanks, Lars. It's just one of those things that's like, okay, there's a certain point you have to hit and then stop. And
Right.
like that's why I say use the Dre method, because Dre still keys all his shit on a keyboard. He doesn't like on an actual piano or a keyboard. He doesn't go out and like look for sound packets, or he doesn't Little Nas it, where he goes out and he hires a bunch of people that can make a bunch of digital noise and then mumble his way through it.
That's why I like
Dre
early. That's why I like Wu-Tang Clan.
Dude, yes, Wu-Tang.
So like especially one of my favorite rap tracks of all time, The Mystery of Chess Boxing.
Yeah.
Just because, like you said, it wasn't overly produced, but the beats were there. Because the East Coast rap and West Coast rap, they have a different way of bumping. Let's acknowledge that.
Yeah.
It's different. It's distinct. But it doesn't make one better than the other. It's just the lyrics also. It's like I can get down with the rhymes they were spitting.
Dude, that was one of my favorite things about rap back in the day, was the regional sounds you would get out of it.
Right.
You had the West Coast rappers, you had the New York rappers, you had the Miami rappers, then Houston popped onto the scenes, and dude, like all the different sounds was fantastic. But then for some reason, the Houston sound started sinking in so bad that everybody wanted to do it, with exception to, of course, the OGs out in Cali and New York. But like DMX would never bend the knee to that. But it's just one of those things that, like, the diversity is dying,
right,
due to the digital exposure of the music,
right.
And that's honestly the last thing I'll have to say about that, because obviously we've lost Mass Grave on the rap
I'm
talk
sorry.
and stuff. It's all good, but I do agree with him when he says Lars is hugely overrated as a drummer. I agree with that 100%. But now we're gonna move on. What was your favorite cartoon as a kid?
Ooh, let's see. I would say, if I were honest, okay, it had to be G.I. Joe. Until the 90s, until they changed the theme song.
I was going to ask you if it was the 90s G.I. Joe or not. So
no, 80s. I didn't get down with, I think it went like, yo, Joe, got to get tough, yo, Joe. I'm like, no, that's not my G.I. Joe. If that and Transformers, if I were completely honest, and because Robotech, Macross, that was a retrospective on my part. Like, I appreciate it. That's where I got my love for anime. But it wasn't something that I followed continuously. Yeah, I like Ninja Turtles. Yeah, I like He-Man. I had the toys, but if I were honest, I love the G.I. Joe. and it was just funny. There was a podcast I follow called Dreamland, and they were doing a retrospective on 80s PSAs, and those
Okay.
were hilarious.
I do remember quite a few of those old school 80s PSAs.
Like the one
Like,
they highlighted, the one that stuck in my mind was Mass, the show Mass. I liked Mass, but I didn't follow the cartoon. I liked the toys. Like,
yeah.
Thundercats was something similar. I liked it, but going back to Mask, there was one of the PSAs even called out that person could also be a child molester. Oh, like, that's bold, but okay. I didn't know that they even spelled it out like that.
That's great.
I like.
Christian Delorme says 60s Spider-Man.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't mind the 60s Spider-Man.
There were just so many cartoons I may not have latched onto, but I remember. And it might be because of syndication. So USA ran this thing called the Cartoon Express.
Yeah.
And I forgot what the premise was behind it, but they would run a series of cartoons. And one of them was the Laugh Olympics, because it would have everybody from the other cartoons I loved.
Yeah.
And they would play certain games and events. And I forgot what the name of the evil team was, but it was always hilarious. The evil team wanting to get an advantage of every other team, and they just end up screwing it over.
Always.
Yeah. And that animal's chuckle was hilarious. It was iconic. I don't remember how it went, but I remember what it was like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Razy Finger says heavy metal, if that counts. I will count that. I absolutely. Heavy metal might not be a children's cartoon, but it was really good. Hail to Radioactive. Wonderful to see you. Jason Fox says many good cartoons back in the day.
They don't make them like they used to. I'm sorry.
And then he says, have to
hail to the chat. Good to have you all
here. Yes.
Yeah.
Hail. Dude, this is great having so many people in the chat. I'll just come out and say that right now. Because I was at Cops.
Oh my God. Good call out there, Cops. Christian. Cops. As I look back on the artwork, there were some things I liked. There was some artwork I didn't like in it, but I remember, I think it was an after school cartoon. Like I'd get home, like Cops at 3 o'clock. Let's do this, right? And it had that intro hook. Like, you wouldn't believe how many good theme songs were coming out at that time. It's like,
right. Yeah. As a 90s kid, my personal favorites was Batman the Animated Series and X-Men.
You can't go wrong.
Speaking of awesome theme songs, the X-Men was just like
that's still
killer.
It still hits.
It does. I love watching people redo that song on like heavy metal guitars and like pianos and like all the other stuff. And it's like, this song will never die.
No, and
never.
For the time, the artwork was on point.
Yeah, it was.
Like, the artwork was on point.
Dude, that was the first, like, X-Men was the first cartoon that made me fall in love with redheaded ladies, like
Rogue,
between Jean Grey and Rogue, like
Rogue, especially Rogue.
Yeah, dude, especially Rogue, because dude, they knew how to draw.
They didn't hold back.
They did. It was great. It was fantastic.
Oh my God, it was just, well, especially when I started rewatching the '87 Turtles, thanks to Paramount Plus and their finally exhibiting some intelligence by releasing the original 80s cartoon, 90s cartoon. I'm like, I may not have started with the comics, but that was my April O'Neil.
Yeah.
That was my April O'Neil.
I can understand that.
And then even in the cartoons, even though I remember growing up with the Turtles arcade game, and I forgot the artwork was like, okay, I could see what they tried to do with the April O'Neil there, but they could have stuck with the cartoon April O'Neil. They didn't have to have a live actress try to play it. But I get the attempt, But
for sure. Yeah. All right. Hail over on the Rumble side to Cremator. Awesome to have you here. I have no idea when that chat came in, but I do apologize for the slow uptake as usual on Rumble. I wish StreamYards was integrated with Rumble. That would be so nice. But once again, everyone, make sure you're subscribed to Lester, the Skeptic Tank. He does a lot, he does a wide variety of content.
Yeah.
He does some video game stuff. He does some unboxings. He answers questions. He explores things. Like he's very multifaceted. So definitely go check it out. And of course, he's an incredibly intelligent individual, so you don't have to worry about like lowbrowing your viewing. It's also kind of nice. A lot of what he says goes over my head because I'm not a tech guy, but
I'm sorry.
it's okay. It's fine. I'm used to it. I'm around the Dix Division guys all the time, and they start
Oh,
talking,
I
and I'm
remember
all
that.
like, I
You were
wonder
just
what
like,
I'm gonna.
yeah, I remember you talking about you guys talking about numbers make me sleepy kind of thing. I'm like, I get it.
Yeah, last Monday I was like, guys, I'm falling asleep listening to you talk about
Yeah,
numbers.
yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah,
go now.
yeah,
And
yeah.
like, no offense to the Dix Division guys, but
No,
I don't like that's not my realm. You want to talk
no,
about human
and I get it.
psychology? I'm all there, but
No, no, I get it. No, I get it. But
but
yeah.
yeah. So where are your creative interests primarily focused right now? Like, do you prefer like hands-on hobby stuff, or are you more into like digital content creation right now?
Well, I try to marry them. Like I when it comes to product reviews, I don't do a lot of them on the spot. And a lot of thanks, Jason. Appreciate the love. But so for example, what I'm thinking about right now is because I always think about baselines, and people don't look at baselines in context. They always talk about it. It almost seems like an imbalance between objectivity and subjectivity, where you can't have the two. And that's where I try to come at things. Is that I think I mentioned it, and someone was respective of what I said about I like what I like, because there's just so much out there that it's not because I don't like what you like, it's just because I like what I like. Like there are some suggestions thrown out by other people, other content providers, like I'll check it out, but do I have the time for it? Like I just
Right.
finished watching MI2, then I watched MI3 because I'm trying to go through this recommended watching them in order of the MIs, and I'm trying.
Right.
Thankfully, part 3, and this is Abrams' talent. He recycles things because you see it. There is that scene in the first Mission Impossible where he's dropping from the rope and he reuses it in part 3.
Yeah.
Right? And I'll say this. Part 3 I didn't leave my chair like I left my chair often during part 2, and that was like a 2-week ordeal. So going back to that marrying of perspectives. So I don't do a lot of product reviews, but I look at it from a standpoint of what are your goals? What are your objectives? Does this product meet that? So when I look at my baselines and context, like I'm going to probably survey a number of belts I've owned throughout the years because of, when we talk about le pew pew, right? When we talk about that lifestyle, you wear a specific belt for a specific purpose. Like a belt is a belt is a belt. Yeah, it holds your pants up, but if you decide to treat your belt as a utility belt and you're wearing many utilities, and then you have to think about what do you need to do? What do you want while you're wearing this? Can you carry on your life as usual? Can you go to the restroom doing number 1 and number 2 normally as possible? And I will go into reasons why. That's why I go with this kind of belt versus not this kind of belt. So I'm going to ask this question to Cory. Like, what kind of belt do you usually wear if you're going to have le pew pew on your person?
Okay. That depends on which pew pew I'm carrying.
Okay. Well, no, that's fair. That's fair. Like, I'll say, so the one thing I come across is Cobra Rigger, that kind of belt.
Mm-hmm.
But then the ones with a hook and loop. And in my time, I'm discovering that I prefer the simple hook and loop, where basically you feed the belt through the loop and you tighten it, and then most of the belts have Velcro on it. right?
Yeah.
And that's what I use, and that's what I prefer, because I don't want to think like if I gotta go badly, because there are those times when you have to go badly. What's the easiest thing for you to do? Velcro, feed out from the loop, and then depending on where you put your puke, you're gonna put that Velcro side. You're gonna use it to hold it in, kind of, and that's what I go for, and that's what I'm trying to push with my creative endeavors. Like right now, when it comes to my retro gaming,
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually shopping for an old school CRT TV, because
Okay.
because with the LCD LED technology, it does something to the pixels on a legacy system like a Genesis
Mm-hmm.
versus something like a CRT, where you kind of preserve that graphical integrity.
Dude,
Yeah.
I've noticed that. Like, I went to play the original Mario Kart the other day on my 70-inch, and I was like, I'm going to have a fucking seizure because of this. What is up with this? I put it
Did you
on my
notice that
little, like, 20-inch crap TV. Perfect.
You mean because it looks all stretched and it looks
Yeah.
super pixelated? Like,
Yeah, and then, like,
I-
the motions are messed up because of it, and it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
ugh.
And I did find I have to double check on eBay, because I don't know if they do any shipping. Like, for me, it's like, do I want to go creme de la creme of the CRT TVs? Like back in the day in 2000, Wega was a big thing. The Sony Wegas were a big deal back in the day, and you pay through the nose for that, right? And I'm thinking a prize pickup would be one of those, because in some ways I miss having a CRT monitor, because at least with the LED LCD, all the talk was native resolution this, native resolution that. Whereas with the CRTs, I can go, oh, I want to go higher, I can go higher, and it's not going to hurt a thing, and you don't worry about you, because it's like you're holding refresh rate, which is the number of times the screen will be refreshed. And oftentimes 85% or 85 hertz was the sweet spot. But sometimes you can go 100 hertz on a CRT, no problem. And that's, you lose that by going to a LED. If you go any lower than the native, then you might notice some things on your screen going a little funky. That's all I got to say on that. But yes, I wouldn't have thought about getting that. Like, I want to get a good CRT TV so I can play my legacy machines like they were meant to be played on. Like if I play my legacy Genesis, or if I pick it up, maybe a Super Nintendo or Super Famicom, depends on what I want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, especially with the way activation has evolved, product activation has evolved over the years, right?
Yeah.
And
I remember when you didn't have to activate a product, but
of course. But now with the way EA treats activations, like you got to install their app. Like, oh, it's not enough for me to install like I used to, like put in the license key and then it'll do a back-end activation. No, you got to be on this Origin or EA app. Like, I'm not going to install the game if you're going to force me to install that.
Right. Could you imagine how stupid it would have been if that would have been in place back when we first started playing things like StarCraft and stuff, where instead of just the key inside the
that
CD
would have
case,
been
like
if people had brains, they would have seen how ridiculous the decision was to put that, because it's like,
you'd hope.
it's like, no, I don't want to be wed to something I don't need to be wed to.
Right.
And it's almost like that's why there was a point where I wanted things to progress, but then I see what the effects are if people aren't checking that. So like activation, now it's like, especially with things eventually going diskless based on what I've heard, that you're going to have to install, you're going to have to install something in order to play it. You got to, like EA, like they're trying to price people out of owning games, but being married to their ecosystem.
Yeah.
Pay your $99 a year and you play any game you want. Okay. It saves your physical footprint like you see here, but you don't own any of the games.
Right.
And heaven forbid that you find a way to archive these games so you can have it as backup just in case either the ecosystem goes down for like a day or longer.
Well, and we're actually moving into a much more scary time than just digital only content. And that's every company that I've seen so far is really pushing the cloud gaming thing so that you don't even install it onto your computer. You just click a button and you start playing. And for me, I'm like, okay, that's great for like flash games if I'm on like coffeebreakarcade.com and I want to play like Brick Breaker or some shit, whatever. But when it comes to like, say, Ark Survival Evolved, I'd much rather have it on my system,
I
or
had
something
spent
along those
time
lines.
as Xbox networking support.
Hmm.
And I've run packet traces across the nation about, especially Call of Duty calls. Those are a trip. Because I would call into ISPs. Hey, bro, here's where you're dropping packets. Tell your people to fix it.
Yeah.
Because they would be like along the way, you had several hops in order to get to your destination. And there was like a very common co-location center where people were losing packets. Like, hey, I noticed like a 50% packet drop here. Fix it. Oh, the kids love me. They would give me excellent surveys. And yes, folks, that's how call centers survive. I mean,
Right.
call center agents survive is off those surveys. I don't want that on anybody because the internet, as nice as it is, it's still unstable because there's that variable. It's always going to be the one on the slowest part of the connection.
Yeah.
You're at the mercy of who's slower between, especially with the peer-to-peer gaming, who's ever slower between you two? That's how fast you're going. That's a tried and true principle.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why I'm what I'm trying to push is this principle-based thinking. Even though I haven't really upped my education in tech, I think a lot of the principles still apply. And I'm sure Low Spec, if he's still watching, he can attest to that. There isn't much new except for the technology that I might have to brush upon, like a new processor. Might have to install it a different way. But other than that, troubleshooting stuff, it's all principles. You know,
all right.
but as far as go ahead.
Well, we're getting ready to close out this show. Of course, hail to Tollbat, who shows up late. Lizards always running on their own clock and stuff. Oh my gosh. But so what are your hopes for your YouTube channel and stuff?
That I can diversify it in the right way.
Okay.
You know, like I always find the connection points. I wouldn't have done the Slackware series stuff I've done if not for one person to say, "Hey, can you do something on this?" I'll do what I can. I can't guarantee that it'll be exactly the way you want, but I'm going to do what I can. Like, I've answered a lot of my own questions in keeping myself productive, survivable within Linux. That I'm almost at this point. Like I said, there's only so many hours in the day that I can dedicate to keeping up with my Linux machine. Right. And so far, among my Linux machine, my Mac machines, and my Windows, my Linux machine may have only given me like 5% grief that I can address, and I'm back up. My Mac, it's starting to give me grief. My Windows, because it's Windows, it's always giving me grief, and and especially with the way Windows has been, I'm neither here nor there. Like, if I could avoid it 100%, I would.
Dude, they're pushing me so, like, every single time I look at my computer, it's all like, "Hey, Windows 11, are you going to upgrade now?" I'm like, "No." Like, I don't want Windows. You have to be clear. Windows 7 back.
Well, that's the thing. It's like what I think. I forgot where we mentioned this, but basically, pay a maintenance fee and then you get the new version if you want. But you know, here's a collective pack of updates for you to update your thing. I think we talked about that with the Madden games because that's what's you're paying like that $60 or not $100 for what? A roster update and maybe a few tweaks?
Pretty much.
And yeah, that's the other thing too. When it comes to what I want to answer is looking at this idea of video game football, where number one, there used to be competition. Number two, because of the competition, you ended up with different products. The question is, what do you want your football game to do for you? And that's another pop piece I'm gonna bring up as well.
Hell yeah. TZ Burton says, I enjoy listening to you guys. Thank you, TZ.
Appreciate that, TZ. I hope we didn't go too over your head, especially from me.
Hey, I'm probably the only one confused here. That's pretty normal. Tolbat says, was out riding a motorcycle.
Hey.
Well, la-di-da for you, mister. I've got
Hope
snow
you enjoyed
over
it,
here.
man.
Yeah, I hope you had a good time, bro. I hope it was nice. TZ says, I need to upgrade my MacBook Pro from X to Linux.
Ooh, if you can do it, that'd be cool.
I need to swap my operating system to Linux as well.
If
I'll
you
have
want,
to talk to
like,
Low Spec and
yeah,
you
listen to
guys
him.
about that.
He'll get you on track with that because, like you said, you voiced in previous streams of what your requirements are, and I think he would be the conduit for that because I know what my preference is, and it's not the easiest. I'll say that right away. But for myself, I wanted that so I can actually learn what. But for you, if you just need something to work, Low Spec is your guy because he's more in that world than I am. So.
Yeah. Okay. And again, make sure you're subscribed to Lester the Skeptic Tank. We currently have him up to 63 subscribers. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. And remember, guys, YouTube likes to screw around with people's sub counts. So if you subscribe, make sure you watch at least a few minutes of a video, if not an entire live stream, just to make sure it keeps your subscription.
And everybody's been
hail to Ruben Christopher Haynes.
Oh, there you go. Start using Linux. I've been
dude.
You and I, if we're gonna be in that comics member stream or whenever he decides to do it, let's go ahead. I wonder what would happen to the subscriber count on Dick's Division on comics if Ruben comics and I get into this tech chat because he lives in that world, and I think
he does.
Man Flu also lives in that world, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, we would have to apologize to the audience at large over there about sorry guys, we're gonna nerd out on Linux.
Hell yeah! But ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna go ahead and wind down now. Tobat says my average view time on my channel is like 2 seconds.
That's too bad. That's
know what?
One thing
mine is very similar.
I will say this. The shorts culture, if you want to call it that, that might be the contributor to that. Because I've seen it in person where I was hanging out with a dude and his son, and the son's just scrolling through 10 seconds. Next.
Yep.
3 seconds.
Next. That's my son too. Yeah.
So
welcome to Clown World.
Don't this is why I've unlisted my shorts. Because I know where people are going. It's like I regretted putting out my Tears for Fears clips. I'm gonna put something more together. It's just I can't do the shorts. I know it's a way to draw more subscribers, but then it does affect your overall channel if you're predominantly long form, which I tend to be.
Yeah. TZ Burton says I actually popped up on his feed today. That's good. That's rare that YouTube actually does that for me. He also says, I just watched shorts of girls in spandex. That's not a bad way to kill 10 seconds, bro.
No. And I can look at that phrase many different ways.
Indeed. But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and wind down now. So Lester, tell everyone where they can find you and
they should be able to look up the channel. Just use @TheSkepticTank because I think that's, as you can see in the address, that's how you can get to me as well. That or just type in Lester San Jose, the Skeptic Tank. I should show up in a search result or two. And then you'll see my updated avatar, which everyone's remarking I look like Men in Black. Although when I look at that, I'm like, either my camera did it wrong or something to the effect that made my blue suit look black. Okay, I'll go with it. But you'll see my mug with my now broken sunglasses, but they weren't broken at the time. Anyway, so... yeah, you'll find me there.
Well, I did not mean to remove him from the stream. Gosh. But yes, make sure you're subscribed to Lester. He does a lot of great content. And if you're into more higher intelligence stuff, as far as actually having to engage your brain, Lester's a good choice. If you're looking for random weird shit, then make sure you subscribe to this channel, Talks a Lot Entertainment, where I will be doing some quick reviews today. I will be doing a quick review a little bit later on The Blackening and Five Nights at Freddy's.
I will say this:
keep an eye out.
You nerd out on different things. So, it's a compliment because we all try to nerd out on any topic we are interested in.
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna dive into your one on mental health. I have it in my backlog, but I am gonna watch it. So It's like if you're passionate about something and you look at any detail, you're essentially a nerd of that type. That's why I like to say I'm a nerd of the diverse type. That whether we're talking pop music, we're talking about pew pew, or we're talking about music, tech, martial arts, which,
dude,
I don't know if. See, it's funny. Depending on the camera, I don't know if I can give Cory a virtual Jeet lesson because he said he wanted to look into that stuff.
I totally do.
So, yeah.
But yes. So make sure you're subscribed to Lester, ladies and gentlemen, and stay tuned later on for the Cory's quick reviews. They are, of course, less than 5 minutes. So it takes less than 5 minutes to do my job. That's all it really need. So yeah. Anyway, stay sexy. Don't get murdered. Subscribe to Lester. And as always, have a wonderful day. Bye.
Take it easy, y'all.
Not the right button.